Well, some people experiment with drugs out of curiosity. Well, do you know someone or do you have a loved one who is addicted to drug abuse, or are you a victim yourself? Sometimes it happens to any person, regardless of the race, of the age, of the background, of the financial position. You could just begin it as a joke and it develops into an addiction. Today we want to talk about drug abuse, substance abuse, what causes it, how it comes about, how we can solve this problem and the process of getting into addiction. Wherever you are from, kindly tune in. Remember, in this time, age and era, we have our youngsters smoking weed as it comes, making it almost a normalcy. And we need to speak to them so that we can break the chain. And the word of God is power. Of course, knowledge is power, and that's why we are here to impact you, to ask you to understand how to break free. Hata kama pengine ni mama kanisani, usiogope, uko na watoto wako, pata kuelewa ili wakapate kufunguliwa. Basi pamoja na mimi leo, I'm honored, I'm excited to have two doctors in the house, and what better coincidence than to have two Elizabeths who are doctors right here on my left and right. I should name my second born Elizabeth. My name is Super Waroe, not Elizabeth, and I'm excited to have you. Kindly let's have our introductions from my extreme right.
The last time we were doing a show and I told you, you asked me, why aren't you saying you're a doctor? So I think today I'll begin.
Yeah, kindly.
Yes. Dr. Elizabeth Wangari, Keshimo.
Asante.
Yes.
Karibu sana.
I'm Dr. Elizabeth Koimet. Yes.
Karibu pia.
Asante.
And the great thing about both doctors, they are born again and spirit-filled. So I love the fact that you're going to be mixing science and the spiritual, which is really exciting. Let's talk about drug addiction. And I'd want us to begin with you. I'd want to understand the process of the addiction.
Yes, so for most people, teenagers usually begin taking drugs as experimentation. And for the most part, it's usually an influence from, what you call it, a peer, or it could be, for some, if they say if it's like alcohol, and their parents maybe normally have drinks in the house, they start by testing or taking it from that point.
Pengine ukiambiwa peleka vyombo jikoni.
Yes.
You're like, I should
ile imebaki. Ama maybe mzazi hayuko nyumbani. Unaona? Na unaonanga kuna hii kanywaji, kakitu wanafanyanga, wanaambianga watoto mtoke. Ama wanasema hii si ya watoto. You know, and kuna wengine, you have others who their parents give them. Yeah. So usually it starts from, that's always the entry point of any drugs. And I believe Elizabeth, maybe we'll talk a bit more, but usually with most people, you find the first stage, they never have an intention of using the drugs.
And getting addicted.
And getting addicted. But you see, that's the entry point. It starts with experimentation.
Curiosity.
Curiosity, isn't it? Yeah. And then it progresses pole pole. The next time you find yourself, you're actually seeking it out actively. And from there, it progresses. That's from experimentation, progresses to when you seek it out, you form a habit, and eventually leads to addiction. So, and it's a process. It's not something that you just, tunatumia mara moja and you become addicted. Hapana. It's just that experiment, siku ya kwanza. And then maybe the next time you're like, labda nataka kusikia vile nilisikia ile last time I used this.
Because at this point, I get to understand that drugs give a sort of, I don't know what is the right word, but as you begin to experiment, you get a temporal high.
A temporal high. You feel good. And you want to do it again.
Yes.
And for some people, I want to take it up from where Elizabeth has stopped. For some people, they may do it because of some struggles they have inside of them, some psychological problems. For example, for women, especially women in domestic violence, and out there they have their peers who are telling them, if you want to sleep, then the best thing, you buy yourself a bit of wine, so you can take a glass of wine just before you sleep. And then you will not worry about this man, wherever he has gone or whatever he is doing. Gradually, that woman, as Daktari has said, process by process, little by little, that woman becomes addicted. Because probably at first it was just to give them peace,
Solace. Yes.
solace, some comfort. For some others is kama anakunywa hata mimi sinikunywe, nisikie vile anafanya.
Ama ni nini huwa anaenda kukunywa.
Wacha hata na mimi nisikie. So it gradually goes like that until finally this woman cannot do anything, or this man cannot do anything without that drug.
So the most important thing here we're trying to try and dissect is the entry points, and some begin by curiosity, peer pressure. Let me try. Those are for the younger adults, or maybe younger children or teens who live with parents who do drugs or alcohol. And some would be out of stress. Some would try to really just understand, my partner does it, why shouldn't I do it? And the thing is, the entry point, the beginning point could be very innocent, but the consequences are lasting and very dangerous. So here is this woman, and Dr. Koineta, as we continue on that same track, kuna huyu mama, kwa mfano, let's take case X of a woman who is in domestic violence or who feels abandoned by the husband. Na anaanza na glass moja ya wine. Because probably you've dealt with such. How does it develop VP?
As we said, and as Elizabeth has put it so well, it is gradual. So inaanza na ile kidogo. Anaweza hata kukunywa hiyo ya kwanza, kama nilikuwa na case moja. She told me that she started even by diluting it with water so that it can go down her throat.
Because it was not something she was used to.
No, it wasn't even something good. And it was even sweet wine. She was talking about sweet wine. But gradually, she started taking it out of the bottle. Because, unfortunately for addicts, the more they take, the more they want. And the more they have capacity for it. By the time she was looking for help from us, she was able to take a whole bottle of whiskey, and that would not even give her the high. And so she would go on to prescription drugs, because that is the other problem. That once they do not experience a high from probably the conventional drinks that we know, hard or soft, they will want to go into prescription drugs. So you find somebody going to the chemist, maybe they want Domicam. There's a drug called Domicam, which induces sleep in someone. And they want to take that. So by the time she was coming to us, she could not stay a single day without Domicam. And by and large, that causes a lot of harmful problems to the body.
My goodness. So here is that entry point, and we're getting addicted slowly. But does an addict know they're addicted? Because I've met addicts who'd say, I'm not addicted. Nakunywanga tu pombe. Kidogo kidogo tu. But I'm not necessarily addicted. I mean, not all addicts are able to understand that they are under an addiction. So I'm living with someone. How would I know that they're under an addiction and someone is watching us and they can't do without something? How would you help them look at it and say, yes, I am addicted?
Yes. Yeah, so the key things to note, or what you can to identify if you're, addiction is defined, there's so many out there, but a simple one is if, from even what my colleague Elizabeth has described, you find that you need more of the drug. While before, for example, if you used to drink 1 glass of wine and it was doing that for you, and now you find that you need a bottle of wine in order for you to get the same effect that you were getting with 1 glass of wine. That in itself means you're already in the process of addiction. And so the first thing, if you need more of the drug in order to get the same high, that means you have a problem. And then also the other thing to note is that if people around you are beginning to have problems with you. For example, if it's a student, you find that, and what I have seen for when I've dealt with addiction, you find especially students who are in this medicine, hard sciences, usually they use bangi Or
They call it weed.
weed.
To make it look a bit more, prestigious.
Classic.
Yeah, and classy.
Yes, weed. And why they usually end up having to seek professional help is because now you find that the person, while they were neat and taking care of themselves, they're neglecting themselves. Then the other thing that normally happens that you can note is that the way they relate, they kind of tend to isolate themselves a bit more.
Or hang out maybe with a particular group of people.
Exactly. And so now another point here is, you see, because of these behaviors that they're exhibiting, of course it starts to impact on the relationship. You see, for example, like with this these particular students that I've dealt with, they were not, like, when they get home, they're not coming out to eat. They're not coming out to relate with everybody else. When the parents try to confront them, they are very hostile and aggressive. So you see, it's starting to affect the relationship.
So those are things to look out for, and probably there's someone who'd ask, then why do people take drugs? I mean, the outcome is very ugly. You'll be unkept, like what Daktari has said. There'll be self-isolation. You won't attain your goals. Then why would people just get into drugs?
Unfortunately, many of them get into drugs because they think it's the in thing. It's the one that makes you belong. Take, for example, shisha. Why would anybody go, sticking your noses in those things? Yes. Why? But you see, you want to belong. You also want to be, to be somebody who is considered as with it. And unfortunately for us in our nation today, because of probably the prevailing situation and problems in our nation, there is a certain need for especially young people to feel wanted, to feel that they belong to a certain sort of good class or high class, as they call it. And the people that I have met, people who have come to us for help, many of them will come from well-to-do homes.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, they will come from well-to-do homes because, after all, without money, you may not be able to
sustain that lifestyle.
You may not be able to sustain the lifestyle and take those things that you actually want to take and then feel that you are with it. So no matter the drastic kind of effects of the drugs, people will still go for them. For example, why would people go poking their skins just to get a high because of cocaine or heroin? And then the drastic effects of cocaine and heroin, especially heroin. The other day, there was a boy who actually recovered at our institution, and he was on heroin. By the way, the withdrawal symptoms are so bad. They are so bad, so painful. That boy was crying every day.
My goodness.
And every night he couldn't even sleep because of the effects of heroin. But you see, unfortunately, the people who do heroin and the way it is packaged, the orientation they get, it makes them feel this is it. If I don't do heroin, if I don't do drugs, then I have lost it.
And I'm not in the quote unquote. Yes. My goodness, we are going for a short break. When we come back, much more. It is very sad, almost heartbreaking. If you're a parent and you're watching, it just breaks your heart into tiny, small pieces to imagine that young people get into it just to be with it or just to feel cool, as they would say, but the effects are damaging, and the recovery process is not a walk in the park. We'll be right back. My name is Super Waroe.